Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and of course, if you want to like the video, we do appreciate it. Well, this is the wrap-up of the last episode here that I didn't do as well as I liked, and didn't do as well as I did the first time. We had a total of 8 men killed, 1 armor, 1 vehicle, the Sherman and the 75mm half-track. 20 wounded. We see the totals there. Though for killed, we took out 1 of their half-tracks. No, actually, I guess we wounded the half-track and we killed the tank. And we killed 10 of their, including an officer, and wounded 33. So we definitely got them more than they got us. So now we can do a hasty attack, a prepared attack, night or dawn. Resume attack as soon as possible to keep pressure up on the enemy. There is no chance to rest, reorganize. Okay, well, we are really shot up, so I'm not ready for the hasty attack. Prepared attack. Regroup your units, plan a new attack. As repair or reorganization. New fire support may become available. Resupply overnight. We're going to do a prepared attack, I think. Yeah. Get the time. We are really shot up. I don't like their condition. Okay, so this is going to be our zone of control. We're theoretically attacking, though if you notice force balance, they are still much heavier. We will have a mortar barrage and an artillery barrage available to us. They should have none. Okay, yeah. Is it going to be working? I noticed that the crew is just down to 3 men. Night attack here. Hey, thanks, Arno. What does reputation mean? I'm not sure within this game. And how it would affect gameplay. Okay, well, we are all shot up. This is not what I want to see here. Okay, so let's see about first getting rid of some of our weaker units. Those that are down at like 4 men for a BAR team. MG's a little less worried about that. Well, but we should be restocked on ammo. So let's see what we can do with squads that are like 5 men and over. We may get back some of the weaker units, but or we can bring in, yeah, we can bring in some from the 82nd Airborne. Let's do a rifle and no. It would be part of the support, not part of the main group. So we are. And right now, I'd rather have the tank and the 75 than some of them. Okay, so we're all filled up with our support elements. Third platoon HQ. Company reserves. I think that would be a... Now's the time for that. Okay, well, let's... Part of the reason here that I want healthier units. Because we're going to split up a few. Okay, so a couple of bazookas. Because we still are maybe facing that Tiger and a Panzer IV. Hopefully not the half-track or the Panzer III. So, we now control a lot more of the field. I'm going to switch it to this view here, pull it out a little bit more. Okay, yes, they're calling this to be an attack, I hope. Defending looks like commander, gunner, looks like everything is working, but we're just down to 3 crewmen, gunner, driver. Let's bring you up to here. No, come on, yeah, good. That. Is this our 50? Yes. Okay. Yeah. As control, you get to go all the way around like this to see. And I'm going to tell you right now, here's what my strategy is going to be, since we know how tightly they're boxed in here, is to mostly just drop artillery on them. And hopefully that just breaks them, and then we push in and overrun them. As sort of as brutal or as simplistic as that. Especially if we're talking in real life here. I don't want to spend lives just, you know, of soldiers. Here's a little bit of philosophy, and I'll see what Van Bishop has to say in a minute. Officers, which are, okay, now I'm going to even step back before. I've had some military training in ROTC, Reserve Officers Training, for those of you who don't know. But I've not been in the military, so this is coming from somebody somewhat outside of the military. So if you want to discount this entirely, you can. But I have known a lot of military people, some that you could more or less call careers, you know, majors and whatnot. And I've talked to them about this, and some of them, especially some NCO types that I've argued with them. One of my best friends years ago, sergeant in the Marine Corps, he very much admired the Israeli army and thought that the Israelis had the best system, that everybody starts out as privates, and you move up, you become a sergeant, then you become a lieutenant, then you become, you know, a captain, and you move on up. So everybody, you know, starts out on basic 0 and moves through the ranks. Well, what he doesn't understand, and I say this, he was a counterintelligence person in the United States Marine Corps. Oh, good, Evil 6. And what he didn't understand was one of the reasons, because, you know, he respected very, very few officers. One, he told me 2 of them. One was, I think, went through Annapolis, who was in the Marine Corps, and the other one who was in the, went through the, that he personally knew, respected. I'm not talking about heroic officers in the past, but that he actually had worked with. The other one was a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute. Otherwise, he didn't respect most of his officers. And I tried to get through to him that, yeah, the Marine Corps is a smaller institution and not like the U.S. Army or something, and not like the Israeli Army. And so if you have everybody go through the ranks, they're going to be really old by the time they get to be generals. So you need to have them start up a bit further. And 2, a lieutenant really isn't there because he knows better than the sergeant how to do things. He is there to do 2 basic jobs. 1, learn how to be an officer. And it's learning on the job. Yes, you've gone through, whether it's the Virginia Military Institute, the VMI, or West Point, Annapolis, you know, for the Marine Corps and like the SEALs, or you know, just through officers training, like reserve officers training that I was going through. You know, you go through schooling first, and there's, you know, real training involved, but part of it is on the job training as a platoon leader, as the U.S. Army likes to call them. That's part of your job. You're there to learn how to do this well. You practice, and you hopefully make your mistakes, which can cost people their lives on a small scale and not a large scale. So that's part of what you're doing. The other part of what you're doing is in essence sort of give/transmit orders, and then see that they're carried out. And when I say that, give/transmit orders, it's like, take this hill. And they may even say, well, we're going to take it, and whether they've been ordered or whether he's looked at it, and we're going to come up from the left flank. Okay, well, it's then the job of the sergeants, who are supposed to have potentially years, when you're going in World War II and things are early on and you're expanding your army out huge for the U.S. Army, they may not have been in the military for years, but you're supposed to know your job. And then the sergeants are actually to be the ones to actually figure out and I'll read Evil Six, I'll read, and Van Bishop, your comments here in a minute, but figure out just the path and who's doing the fire support and how are you getting up the hill. They're supposed to do it. The leader, yeah, he's still giving leadership element, through this whole process, but he's supposed to let the sergeants handle it and make sure that it gets done. He's there to make sure that the hill gets taken. Or if not, well, they gave it a really good try, whatever that means, and have reported it back. They're there to make sure that the job gets done. So this is why you have the break in it. Now, there's also another reason why you need a break, and the U.S. Army, shall we say, and which I know better than the Marine Corps, though much of my life I've had levels of good friends that are in the Marine Corps, and then, of course, meeting some of their other veteran Marine friends and talking to them over the years, so some familiarity there. But one of the reasons, like I say, the U.S. Army really hasn't, yes and no at different times it's gotten, but it hasn't transmitted it maybe as well, is, and I've studied heavily the British Army, and part of it is a social class break between officers and men, but also part of it is a distancing between officers and men that is needed. Because a private or a sergeant's job is to kill the enemy, okay? That is, defined, because they have a rifle. They're supposed to aim down that rifle. You're not seeing me, I'm giving nice hand gestures, and aim down the rifle and shoot the enemy. What is an officer's job? To kill his men. Not, pull out his pistol and shoot them. No, it's to kill some of his men by sending them to the top of this goddamn hill, and he knows that some of them are going to die taking this hill, presumably if the enemy are, here. So his job is to have his men do things that are going to get some of them killed, is to use up their lives. Now, a good officer, because we have to win World War II. We can't let the Nazis win World War II. We could talk about some other wars, whether they were worth fighting or not. Okay, and sometimes the sides that we ended up supporting may be just as bad, but probably, I would say mostly not as bad, but may still be bad in other wars. But World War II, we've got to win World War II. There isn't it's not a binary whether it's good or not. We've got to win World War II. So whatever it costs in lives, we need to win World War II. So the officer, though, whether it's a platoon leader, company commander, generally a captain, though sometimes that could be a lieutenant, even theoretically sometimes it could be a major, just sort of stepping in for that, or battalion commander, generally major types, up to generals, but their job is to achieve their objectives of defeating the enemy with the fewest casualties to their side. So is get a few of their men killed as practical, not necessarily as possible, but as practical to win that objective. And so you need that sort of social distancing, emotional distancing, because, we could talk about it, Private Stewart is killed. Well, that having Private Stewart is killed should not freeze up your officer in sending the next private back into that same building or up onto that same hill, because he's probably going to be killed too. But we've got to get to it. It's a great scene, which isn't done with officers, in part of the reason I'm doing this here, is with the movie The Big Red One, which is about the 1st Infantry Division, starring Lee Marvin and Mark Hamill. Very good movie. Highly recommended it if you haven't seen it. And it follows, looking at about, 5 characters' history through from the Morocco landings up until basically the end of the war. Do it very well in a, roughly 2-hour movie. And there's the one scene on D-Day, beach, I forget which, Omaha, Utah, whatever, in which they're having to do the Bangalore torpedo tube. It's, the big tube that they're assembling to get under the barbed wire. And they're, everyone had drawn, lots to see what, if they're going to have to use it, because they don't have a bazooka available to blow up the barbed wire, who's going to go out and what. And so, the first guy goes out, gets part way there, gets shot. The next guy comes up, grabs the tube that was lost, and plus his own section of the tube, and puts it together and gets it a little bit further there and gets shot. And, it's several guys into it. And then one of the main characters, Mark Hamill of the story, it's his turn. So he sort of goes up there. There's a shot near him. He drops down, sort of somewhat playing dead, somewhat cover, hopefully not to be shot at some more. And he's holding it there. And then it's him looking sort of back somewhat, and Lee Marvin pointing his M1 Garand at him. They're not saying anything, but sort of, looking at each other in the eyes, realizing that his sergeant is going to shoot him if he doesn't get up and get that Bangalore torpedo tube to the barbed wire, because they're all trapped on the freaking beach. And they're being machine gunned and shelled by the Germans, and their, if not only chance of ultimate survival, their best chance of ultimate survival is getting off that beach. And if Mark Hamill's character doesn't pick up that Bangalore torpedo tube and get it to the wire and get it to blow up, somebody else is going to have to do it. So somebody's potentially going to die. So Lee Marvin needs to use the real, not just threat, but real promise, if you will, death if you don't get your ass up off that beach and get the Bangalore torpedo tube. That's obviously highly dramatizing the situation for a movie. I don't want to, understate that. But that is sort of the essence. Now, of course, officers can't just run around with their pistol threatening everybody with death, because, as coming out of the Vietnam War, the term fragging, some of, if you have a bad officer who's always telling you to do stupid shit and getting your people killed, somebody's going to make sure he dies in the next firefight with the enemy. So you have to, especially down at the low level, lead the troops, convince them morally, in a morale sense, that yes, you have to follow orders, and yes, if you all run away, there will be court-martials and there will be firing squads potentially someday. So you have to follow orders, but you also, if you're in a court-martial and go, well, I didn't follow orders because he was having us do stupid shit. Yeah, but the idea is you got to convince your platoon, your company, that you've got to take this hill, and men are going to die, but taking this hill is going to save more men, whether it's you and this company or battalion or whatever, or just other soldiers other days. So, and you're going to be back at fighting. So an officer's job is to kill his men, but to try to do it in the fewest possible. And this is why, thanks very loud motorcycle, this is why you have the needs to have the emotional separation between officers and men, especially on large institutions. We could always talk about the Marine Corps. It is fairly large, obviously larger than some national militaries, but you can maybe do things a bit different in the Marine Corps, because it is one self-selected volunteers, that they're volunteering to be in the Marine Corps. They might get a draft notice, but I think it's always been, maybe in World War II, I don't know. But most of the time they've been volunteers. No, they've been, like I said, they may have gotten their Army draft notice and decided to show up at the Marine Corps recruiting depot and join that instead. But so you can find somewhat different circumstances there for those in that experience. But when you're looking at an army, even a modern day volunteer army, not everybody who joins the army, is Audie Murphy. Or Sergeant York, two very real people. So you need to be able to motivate them, convince them in one way or another, and not just from the threat of death. Though that's always, not whether your officer had, and that's one of the reasons officers have pistols. But so in many different armies, not necessarily to shoot at enemy soldiers, but not so much them, but the overall institutional thing, that if you run away and desert, if you run away from a bad situation and you're back the next day, or the next few hours, because you ran away because your position was overrun or something, but you come back, that isn't, at least, if it's more or less explainable, desertion in front of the enemy. It's, being panicked, as we see in this game, which does really well in simulating it. But if you just generally run away and desert, then you have various, which up to, firing squad types situation, legalistic military penalties for it. So you have to understand that is the job of the officers, is to get your people killed, or to kill your people, but do so in the most economical fashion to achieve the objective. I want to go back to Van Bishop's. Oh, we're already rolling up there. Okay, from what I've seen so far, the game is best when it's infantry versus infantry, presence of army units, and truly imbalances the fight when it's tanks versus tanks looks on. Yes, I think this game, well, obviously the close combat is a, franchise and will likely to continue, but I hope that this particular game will continue to get worked on and updated a little bit more. Mid-senior level NCOs kind of guide the new officers. Weird because it's still called them Sir. The boss training just kind of strange. Yes, and you're right, Evil 6, but I think as I sort of explained why you need to develop, and it's not just the sergeant calling the officer Sir that's important for the sergeant, but and that's part of it, because it goes back to the old Sir is part of going back to the old chivalric type to the Middle Ages, but on through the ages, why you're calling him Sir. But it's also important that the men of the platoon or the squad hear the sergeant giving respect to the officers. That is also part of it, Evil 6. So it's not just, it's part of it to get the sergeant in the mental space that this maybe kid compared to the sergeant is the one in charge. And so it's partly that, but it's also partly that the rest of the platoon squad hear that, and so that they internalize it. So there is that important reason for the Sir, for the special respect for officers. It's not that they are, we don't hold the values of the Middle Ages or whatever, and how some people are born better than others, and so they do, just because of their birth, deserve special respect that others don't get. We're not talking about that. We're talking about instilling certain things. And so you say, I can't say that I've had Evil 6's experiences in Iraq or Marine Corps generally, but I do understand, because of my study, why the military needs to do certain things in certain ways. I'm going to get something to drink. Marina will be back. I agree with the overall reasoning, but would change the word lives, casualties with resources. An officer manages resources has to be cost efficient. As of today, trained soldiers cost $1 million in World War II next. Thus, the change of the tactics, stronger focus on minimizing casualties. Officer's job has become even more closer to that, to the managers or CEOs. Yeah, Van Bishop, you definitely have a point there, but I guess what I'm talking about is maybe to some degree what you're talking about, but also the idea, America and production, the idea of the cost of either this tank, the cost of the tank to the overall American economy is negligible, in World War II. And sure, we have a lot fewer M1 Abrams than we make Shermans right now. And you do have, like you say, the cost of training like a tank crew. But I think that if we are really deploying into real combat situations, the dollar wastage of war is a factor, but not the big one. I think it's more the emotional wastage of war is the bigger factor in the situation, and that's why. And this is how I look at it. and I'm going to go here, and I hadn't planned to. This is why it is best not to have women in combat jobs. And it's not that they can't do the job. Some absolutely can. Others can sort of, kind of, and yeah, they may have a specialty, but it gets down to one of the major reasons that I object to it. And it's not from an anti-feminist, again, position, or they can't do it. It's the emotional cost on the officer or the sergeant or the overall squad. This is what Israel found, is when you had a soldier wounded, a male soldier wounded, a couple of guys would get stretchers or help that guy off the field. Because in the early days in the Israeli armies, they put women into the front lines. I'm not talking the very, very earliest days, but in the generally early days. Put them into the front lines. But what they found is when a woman in a rifle squad got wounded, that whole squad left the field carrying the woman back as a protective thing. Just emotional protective element to get her back to whatever medical treatment. A little different than if they got killed, because they would maybe be emotionally affected, but they're not running away from the battle. So it's partially the reaction to the men and its natural biological and sociological situation that dealing with women casualties in the front lines. And this is not talking about women needing different showers, and we can talk about all of those other additional costs of having women in not just in the army. That's different. I'm not talking about the army. I'm talking about frontline combat positions or fighter pilots, women fighter pilots, because you got a woman shot down behind enemy lines or just somewhere out in the nowhere, nothing. You're going to have the fighter squadron react differently than if it's a guy who's shot down. I mean, they're concerned about both of them, but it's emotional reaction of your fellow soldiers. And so your emotional reaction of that, if you've got to send up a scout to look around here to see what's going on, like if you're getting ready to go up the hill, but I didn't set up any scouting teams just because I sort of knew what was going on with the concentration of forces here. But if you didn't know what was going on, you got to send a scout up. Are you going to pick the woman? Is the sergeant, is the platoon leader going to pick the woman in the unit? Either he's going to pick her because to prove that he also picks women once in a while, or he's not, for sociological and biological reasons. So that is why I object. It gets nothing down to the capability of the women. It's more, at least, whether it's biological, which probably won't change. If it's sociological, it may change over time, but isn't changed yet, over us dealing with women in combat roles and what happens to them. It's been more than a year now, but watched a thing about having women liaison personnel of one sort or another in Afghanistan. And even though that they would show up in a village, someone would sort of hear them speaking in English, the other women, but hear the tonal difference in women. And so they could go into the women's quarters and talk to the women. And yeah, that's on the front lines, but they're in the combat zone, but they're not there specifically to carry an M4 carbine. They may have one, but their job is to be social contact with the women of an Afghan community and whatnot. And so yeah, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a flak jacket, they shouldn't have a helmet, and they shouldn't have a gun, and but that's like being sort of and being a combat zone, but that's like being a nurse in a combat zone. It's a specialist job. It's a job that generally is to be protected and not to be part of a fire team. You may add a second woman here that the fire team is sort of escorting to go check out the village. I'm not arguing against women in the military in total. I'm arguing against frontline combat jobs. You have the rifle squad, and then if you need to have the woman assigned to the job, then you do so. Okay, well, let's get back to the game. So that's sort of my sociological military talk and officers for the day. Okay, well, we're going to move these guys right up to here. And we're going to move the bazooka team up to there. 50 cal. Let's see, how's our field of vision from here? Not so great, but let's move a little bit. Like I say, I'm mostly going to just use artillery and hopefully pound the hell out of this. The bazooka teams are just sort of here in case. They've got lots of, again, we're separating our mortars out so that they're not all in the same place for counter battery fire. You come there, you guys come over here. Okay, so we have this tank here and what looks to be the knocked out tank there, which I don't know if they're supposed to be the same, one and the same or not. You can go into the building, I guess. I don't know. I think you have some vision from there. Not great, maybe. Let's move you right up to this wall. Let's move platoon HQ to sort of the central location. Okay, maybe not great, maybe not perfect. You ever play the whole mission from this level of zoom? Well, I find mostly, I know it's more cinematic that if we come in here, but keeping overall, well, let's get you in a better place. Yeah, I mostly do keep it zoomed out, I would say. Look that way, yes, no, look that way. Defend. Why aren't you freaking looking the right direction? Okay. No. Well, maybe you'll turn around and look at the enemy's direction. But yeah, mostly I'm fairly well zoomed out to try to keep a, and then let's see this zone of fire. Actually, let's move you back over here because I'm sort of a little worried about having the tiger just there out and zoom it. Yes, we can do some of that. We will. A good idea. I know it probably would look better. Okay, so I'm going to save this here after we've sort of set that up. Okay, so we've spotted some enemy here. Heavy tank, this is presumably the Tiger. Let's run away with Sherman. I think he is a bit behind from here. Can't really be seen, but we're gonna just get a little bit more away. And that is medium, presumably that's the Panzer IV. I think we killed the Panzer III. Yeah, Panzer IV, Tiger. And we are unfortunately already taking casualties, I thought. Let's see. Yep. Curtis is unconscious, so a little too far forward. Somebody's firing off their bazooka already, and who are they firing at? Oh, they're firing at them already. Okay. That is not the best outcome wanted. A little too close. Okay. So we are going to see about dropping artillery or mortars here. Well, you know, let's wait for that to develop a little more. Okay, I made a mistake putting these guys too far forward. They could have used the bazooka team over here. Okay, and we should have these guys starting to put some firepower into the zone here. That's their job. Let's put trip in between these two units because they're gonna put up the crosses. Suboptimal. One attention media, one within 90% of the Kurds are female. Yeah, you're right about that. The Kurds, and you know, people in the media right now with what's going on, and unlike when I'm on Slytherin, I will get political here on my own channel. The media is throwing around now, we're abandoning the Kurds, we're abandoning the Kurds, as if there are the Kurds. Well, there's about 8 major factions of the Kurds, and the factions sort of, and between Turkish Kurds, Iranian Kurds, Iraqi Kurds, Syrian Kurds, and some of the factions are Maoist Chinese, Maoist communist type belief systems, and we probably shouldn't be friends with them. And although I feel for, particularly civilians killed in whatever casualty, I'm not overly displeased with having some Maoist revolutionary types, because they have been doing various bad things over the many years, and I'm talking back into the 1970s and on through, so that the Turks are taking out some of those guys. I'm not necessarily so upset with. Now, that doesn't mean the Turks are good people or anything like that. I'm just talking about some of the Kurds aren't so good. Some of the Kurds are good, and I really support their group. But about leaving Syria. Should we have left Syria? Well, as I posted on one of the Twitter things, if you could show me that staying another 6 months or another year was going to give some sort of solution, did the air quotes that you didn't see, but not just buying more time and hoping for some, change somehow in the world, but actually would produce a solution of staying longer, I'd be for staying longer and protecting the Kurds. In Syria. We're talking about in Syria. Not talking about the Kurds in Iraq. We're talking about Kurds in Syria. But if you can't show me how, hey, staying there another 6 months is going to change something, then I say we get out. Now, maybe we should have given them better warning, but Trump sort of did, about 6 months ago, was sort of saying, hey, we're going to be getting out. So the Kurds have got to find their own solution. Either, sign up with Assad of Syria, or sign up with somebody else, get some weapons, be able to fight, because the people around them, whether they're Turks or Arabs or Persians or Azerbaijanis or whoever it might be, aren't just going to leave the Kurds alone. So they've got to find a solution, whether it's, like I say, finding a local power as their supporters, or getting enough military power themselves, like in Iraq, and forming their own Kurdistan. I am a big supporter of, moderate rebels, and particularly in relations to Syria, and also Libya. Yeah. Well, and so there's some of this myth of it. Now, I am no fan of the Assad family, and that goes way back. And again, I have not been over there, but I have had some friends that were Lebanese Christians. Now Lebanese Christians aren't terribly fond of Assad, though Syrian Christians generally are fond of Assad, because Assad are Alawites, which are a not Sunni, not Shia Muslims. They're Alawite Muslims. They are a different sort of sect, is my understanding, and I don't know the ideological or whether they're closer to Sunnism or closer to Shiaism or closer to Sufism, which is another sect of Islam, or other sect. But Alawites are not just a tribal group, They are also a religious group, not quite as distinctive as sort of the Druze are another distinctive group. And yes, as you can sort of see, hear me talking both now and future, I have some general idea of the different groupings of these people. Why Druze that are, particularly Druze that are in Israel, are very loyal to Israel and join the Israeli army very happily and whatnot. And the Druze have had sort of a mixed witch alignment to be in Lebanon because they're trying to survive themselves, whether to align with the Muslims or to align with the Christians. And so, yeah, it's a complicated freaking mess over there. And unless you're going to be willing to live under the domination of another power or cultural group, like, living under the Syrian government. Now, the Syrian government may be a leftist, generally secularist, socialist type Assad situation, or it might be a fundamentalist Islam situation in which they want, to be like Iran or something like that. Whatever it's going to be, unless you're willing to live under that, in which some of those may be more friendly and some less friendly to Christians, to Kurds, to Druze, more or less friendly. Unless you're willing to just suck it up and live under that, you've got to find your own homeland. And it may not be, well, but we've lived in this village for 1,000 years. Yeah. And if you're going to stay there, you're going to live under somebody else's rule if they allow you to live. So you may need to, and this is, an ugly thing, but you may need to pack up and move. Now, that doesn't mean you come to America or Canada or go to Europe, but is fight for your own homeland, figure out a spot somewhere on Earth and fight for it and create a Kurdistan, if you will. And if we're creating a Kurdistan, and if the Kurdistan generally comes to pro-U.S. interests, generally pro-Western, shall we say, not Islamic fundamentalists and whatever else, and yeah, we're using your sort of ethnicity versus Arab ethnicities or Turkic ethnicities or Persian ethnicities or whatever as sort of a wedge thing. But if you're willing to do that, you may end up being a nice puppet state of us, and we'll support you within that state. And so, yeah, I am for us pulling out of Syria. Am I saying that it's being handled correctly by Trump right now? Not necessarily. I don't know. I truly don't know, because I don't have good facts on the ground. I don't know if they gave sort of warnings out 6 months ago. Hey guys, you sort of need to get your families out of these zones, out of this area, and maybe get them somewhere else to like Iraq or whatever. But if you're here, you can't rely on us. We might someday just disappear in 24 hours. I don't know. Did they give those warnings or not? I don't know. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. We sort of have this tank here, this group here. So, they're sort of pushing against us. I'm thinking here. No, I'm going to wait for the mortar to come in, or at least a little bit more development. We've already sort of taken a lot of the casualties. I think we were going to take early on. Though, of course, we may have this knocked out at any moment. Okay. That looked like firing a rifle grenade or anti-tank team. So that was probably a Panzerschreck or Panzerfest that just fired over there. Sort of towards that, but that's longer range than you should want to fire at. Something like that for the anti-tank team. Well, looks like they got their half-track working again. We took out one of the anti-tank team's men. Looks like they're all nicely stacked up for our mortar barrage coming in. Fire for effect. Coming very soon here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, our mortars are devastating them. Okay, this isn't going to last very long. I'm going to sort of, I'm thinking I'm going to ignore these tanks because watching their previous behavior. We're going to sort of concentrate back here on this. Now I don't want it too close to there. Oh, also, though this is mostly to those on the live stream here, I didn't, there's smallish numbers partially because I didn't announce that I was going to be live over on my YouTube channel. But Wednesday coming up, I'm going to be streaming for on Slytherin's channel the new game of War Plan. If you haven't heard about it yet, it is sort of like Strategic Command, but I think better. It has its basis, but goes back to the rise and decline of the Third Reich board game, sort of like that I have a long history with. So I have been playing the beta version of it, learning that. So I will be the first stream on War Plan, yes. And it addresses particularly some of my pet peeves with Strategic Command, particularly you have the ability to stack both an air unit and a ground unit in the same hex. Can't stack ground units, but I sort of agree that they've done some things a little better than Strategic Command. Not that Strategic Command doesn't stay a viable game to play, it does on its own, but I think War Plan is better. So, well, it's, for me, 10 a.m. here in California. What is it, 6 p.m. BST or whatever. So it's coming up there. I will be streaming it. And it is coming out on the 24th. I'm presuming at this moment, because I don't know, though, there's been some change in personnel, so communication isn't flowing as well as it could for streaming on. Oh, we got another one of their Panzer Grenadiers down. Streaming as well as it could be for communication. But I presume I may be playing it on the 24th of October when it comes out, streaming it. But they may have other plans and just talk to somebody else and hasn't let me know. I don't know. But I'll definitely be doing it Wednesday. Yes, Lum, they are now Slytherin because actually War Plan is coming out more under the Matrix banner, which is an older developmental house. Slytherin itself as an overall entity, we just had a, was it one of Richardson or Hudson wounded, unconscious, I guess. Is both a game developer and a publisher, game publisher as well. So meaning they're publishing other people's games as well. So I think both Strategic Command and War Thunder are they're two different development teams. So, well, you missed. You fired too far away and you missed the tiger. You should only shoot close up, but whatever. We're going to put you into ambush in this direction. So that way if he gets close enough, you ambush him. Otherwise, you don't freaking shoot. And we've had some spotting round coming in. So yeah, no, I've liked Matrix games going way, way, way back. And some of their titles that they own now, I go back to the old Strategic Simulations SSI days that I'm familiar with. And of course there's new stuff that and it's been out for a few year or two that I haven't played. I'm not like, just because they have it I know about it, but as in know it well. Okay, our 105s are coming in back, hopefully in their artillery support area as well as some of their units here. Yeah, I'm liking what they're doing. I like the company. And this platoon, or fire group isn't doing well. Dead, wounded, May, Fisher, Gill, and White. Yeah, not the best. Not the best. Just a Tiger, I really can't hardly do much about it. Well, not sure. How much you know about Slytherin? And no, I'm not an expert on all this stuff. In a Twitter sort of way, I periodically talk with some of the Matrix Slytherin fairly high ups. I just sort of like meeting on Twitter kind of thing. It's not like I know them. Yeah, Waters is now down to dead. And this fire team is just taken out basically by various elements. That Tiger is just untouchable. But it looks like we're gonna win just on the disrupting their overall group now. Who are you? Okay, you're shooting at these guys over here. Yes, that's, I think Van Bishop is part of the reason there, at least as best as I understand, and I really don't have, I get little tidbits of inside info maybe, but not a whole lot. It's why they're keeping the Matrix branding, not just rolling it into one thing, but mostly, if not entirely, but mostly, if you're dealing with the marketing element, it's the same people between Matrix and Slytherin. I don't think no one's told me not to say something like that. That this is like sort of privated or information. Why are you pointing the freaking wrong way? Fire. Trying to fire at that. He comes up over here. You might be able to hit him in the side. I don't know if it has that level of distinction to be able to like hit him in the side versus now he's putting his front towards you. So maybe it does have that level of distinction of where you would be hitting them. Well, who gets to shoot first? I'm not at this point, I'm not turning my tank around and trying to run away. So I don't know that we're going to survive this. No, we're not. It would be the answer. My tank's knocked out. And our bazooka team shoots over and misses. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, bazooka team. Go to ambush. That means you should only shoot somebody that's fairly close to you. Ambush. Yeah. I don't know if you're not taking a command for some reason. Or the terrain, yeah, okay. There we go. Now you're back into the ambush. Now that you've fired one of your last rounds. Yep, another M4 bites the dust. I need to have that song, but then I would get copyright striked. Yes, we're doomed. I very well might not, just fire reaction time, and tactical positioning. I might, going after that the Panzer IV up here with my M4, would have been a chance of success because in one of my earlier playthroughs of this mission, my M4 took out the Panzer IV, so that would be very doable. But this Tiger is basically a no-go for here, and I've yet to have the Tiger taken out by a... And you guys, you didn't freaking shoot. Oh, well, you no longer have it. You shot up all your ammo. And now they drive right by you, and you could have shot him with your bazooka at point blank range. And I don't know that you would have gotten through, because I've had a bazooka team over here when the Tiger was running around and it went tink, you know, and didn't take it out. So I don't know that we would have knocked it out, but we definitely could have done better with that. Yeah, Van Bishop, and you're right. And this is one thing that shall we say, overall Slytherin needs to be very conscious with of what they publish. So I won't go too much into it. What games they publish and how they market them, because whether it's a publishing brand or a developmental house brand, you can wreck your brand by putting out an inferior product, and people then won't jump on this. I guess I'll say, and it sort of kind of had been released. They had me look at a couple of games. I told them no, not in their current state, and to the best of my knowledge, it's been nothing more has really been happening with them, and they weren't up to Slytherin or Matrix quality. And so not that you can really do much about it. Oh. Yep, the Tiger's running amok. I can't take it anymore. Keep your heads down. Yeah, Imperator Rome is definitely, and Hoi 4, especially at release, is definitely part of what I'm looking at in a non-Slytherin way. Get moving, soldier. But all companies need to keep that in mind. I really would highly stress that unless you just sort of want, because you know, there are reasons to like support Kickstarter and other methods of supporting game development, but that's you're just like, hey, this guy has a cool idea for a game and he has, you know, the ability to produce the game. Whether it's going to be good or not, you don't know, but you just want to like buy into it to hope that the game gets published. That's cool. That you just want to support it, and you know, once it's released, get say a copy of the game. But otherwise, I highly recommend don't pre-order games. You know, just don't do it. So no, we can't save it at this point. So we're going to go to the debrief here on for any studio. Okay, so stalemate, because it ended in morality. We captured an additional objective point. I didn't notice that we captured an additional one. Fighting ended in a stalemate. Not only did your attack fail, but the enemy pushed you back. Yes, I know, because they have tigers and I don't. Well, we lost 5 killed and 1 tank killed, 15 wounded and 1 vehicle wounded. Total of 20 wounded. Now they had 5 killed and 19 wounded and 1 vehicle. For 24. Okay. Now, well, we're going to go prepared attack. But we're going to end this here. We're going to end this episode. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. Like I said earlier, haven't already, please subscribe and like the video. And of course, love hearing from you on any of the topics. So please post questions, comments, suggestions. See you next time for more historical gaming. Oh, gotta do the mouse. Where it is.